but a thing though, bro. Take it easy, baby. Stay up. The world is different. I never seen a man cry till I seen a man die. Fight it, though you'll still try. And you can try it till you fight it, but you'll still die. So you standing in the tunnel of eternal life, and you see the ones you never learn to love in life. If you ain't at peace with God, you need to patch it up. Eliza, not scared to die. May he rest in peace.
Our sun is constantly blasting huge amounts of hot plasma out into space. All those charged particles have a big effect on everything in their path. So what's protecting Earth from the solar wind and solar storms? Earth's thick atmosphere provides some defense, scattering and absorbing solar particles before they reach the surface. But our planet also has a secret weapon, a strong magnetic field it projects into space, mostly generated by molten iron alloys moving in Earth's outer core. The area of space where the magnetic field interacts with the solar wind is called Earth's magnetosphere. Its shape constantly changes as it's bombarded by solar particles. As positively charged protons and negatively charged electrons enter the magnetosphere, most of them are deflected around Earth, long before they reach the atmosphere. The magnetosphere really gets tested when big solar storms, carrying more plasma and traveling at higher speeds, are on a collision course with Earth. While most of the plasma is deflected, some of it gets trapped in the magnetosphere and funnels back toward Earth along field lines emanating from the poles. As charged particles from the Sun collide with nitrogen and oxygen molecules in our atmosphere, they create the cosmic light shows known as auroras. The bigger the storm, the further from the poles auroras can be seen. Some storms are so big, they interfere with satellites, cause planes to alter their routes, and can create other problems. The vast majority of the time, these inconveniences are pretty minor. But the next time the solar version of a perfect storm overwhelms Earth's magnetic shield, we might not be so lucky.
The solar wind is primarily composed of protons and electrons, charged particles streaming out from the sun. Some of those particles have very high energies, radiation energies, and they can damage astronauts and spacecraft. We are shielded by our Earth's magnetic field most of the time. However, a small fraction of the solar wind particles get into the Earth's magnetic field, are energized, and become the Earth radiation belts, which can damage spacecraft and harm astronauts.
It ain't nothing but a thing, though, bro. Take it easy, baby. Stay up. The world is different.
Scientists have now spotted signs of a structured boundary between the Sun and the rest of the solar system. The Sun is not a hard ball in space, nor is it a giant ball of fire. Instead, it's a mass of charged particles and magnetic fields. This material extends outward, flowing beyond the surface of the Sun, creating an atmosphere that spreads throughout our solar system. But the transition is not perfectly seamless. Our star can be characterized into layers. Each region has its own temperature ranges and special properties. We call the Sun's atmosphere the corona. The steady breeze of particles flowing out from the Sun and filling the space between the planets is the solar wind. New research indicates that there is a discernible transition between the corona and the solar wind. This difference is marked by a visible change in the consistency of solar material departing the Sun. About 20 million miles out from the Sun, the very nature of the solar material changes, and the Sun's magnetic field no longer controls its movement. At this point, the flow becomes more turbulent. Like water from a squirt gun, the plasma starts as a stream, but then breaks into drops. The farther out it goes, the weaker the Sun's magnetic control of the material, and the less clear its form becomes. To find this transition, scientists took images of the faint solar wind and used an algorithm to dim the competing brightness of background stars and dust. These are the first movies of the solar wind itself in a previously unmapped region.
It ain't nothing but a thing, though, bro. Take it easy, baby. Stay up. never seen a man cry till I seen a man die. Fight it, though you'll still try. And you can try it till you fight it, but you'll still die. So you're standing in the tunnel of eternal life, and you see the ones you never learn to love in life.
What is going to happen when our sun becomes a red giant? Well, it would expand and consume Mercury and Venus for sure. It would also reach Earth, but scientists aren't 100% sure whether or not Earth will be completely engulfed or if it will just orbit dangerously close to the sun.
Now over to Katie for some of the day's top world news.
Up to 100 birds have been found dead in a Swedish street, just days after thousands of birds inexplicably dropped out of the sky in the United States. Fireworks, the cold weather, even poisoning have all been blamed for the deaths, but the experts remain baffled. Here's our science correspondent, Julian Rush.
First America, now Sweden. 100 or so jackdaws dead in the snow in the small town of Falköping. It's as if Christmas had come again for aficionados of the mysterious and irrational.
The only sign of damage was where they'd been run over. They looked like they were in some kind of shock. Everywhere you looked, they'd fallen out of trees.
But at the risk of disappointing conspiracy theorists, mass die-offs of birds like this in Louisiana on Monday morning are surprisingly common. The US Geological Survey lists 90 such incidents in America in the last 6 months of last year, 5 involving more than 1,000 birds. Louisiana wildlife officials believe these birds may have been startled from their roost and flew into power lines. And while in Arkansas, scientists are still looking for the cause of the weekend's mystery sudden deaths of thousands of red-winged blackbirds, the apocalyptic isn't top of the list, even here in the Bible Belt.
Some speculate that it was weather-related, others speculated it was perhaps fireworks because of celebration of the New Year that startled the birds, that caused perhaps stress or heart attacks or whatever, and they just fell out of the sky.